What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are backstage at the Gramercy Theater. We just wrapped up an awesome interview with Omnium Gatherum, and now we are here with one of Gothenburg's finest, Dark Tranquillity.
Hey, how you doing, man?
It's so great to have you here. Thank you for your time today.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's fantastic to be back. It's great to start another tour right here in New York City.
This is your fourth time here on the Atoma record cycle. You sick of us yet?
Is it fourth or third, or something like that? No, we're definitely not sick of it. This is awesome. This is one of my favorite places in the world, and one of my favorite places to play as well. So this is going to be fantastic. So many friends are here, cool people, and we had a blast so far today. And but it's weird, like starting off the tour. It's always crazy and chaotic, but I think it's going to work out fine.
Yeah, definitely. Now, being that it's been about 2 years since the release of Atoma, do you have like a conclusion on that record cycle?
Yeah, this is going to be the last for sure here in the States, at least. We're going to do some more shows, like we go to Asia and we do maybe Australia and stuff like that before we kind of go back home and start writing again.
Yeah.
So, but this is definitely like the wrapping up the Atoma tour.
Definitely. You have so many albums out now, so like with each like album you put out, does it get like harder to put a set list together when playing live?
Of course. It's a nightmare. You're like, what do we do? Like, do we play old stuff? How do we set it together? What do people want to hear? What do we want to play? Like, what feels comfortable? What works on stage? All that stuff. I mean, yeah. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get easier at all. It only gets harder.
Yeah.
And also you want to find something that's fun to play and fun to kind of perform, and something that works with the musicians wherever we have them. So it's a nightmare, but I think for this tour it's very different from the last one we did here in the States, and songs that we tried in Europe on the last tour. So it's going to be a different set, definitely from what we've done in the past year, and I'm really happy with that.
Definitely. Now, if you look at Dark Tranquillity, for me at least, you compare Sky Dancer to Fiction, to We Are the Void, to Atoma. It just seems like Dark Tranquillity's sound has always evolved, but you've always maintained a sound, it seems like it, right?
Yeah, well, I guess, we grew up a certain way. Our influences informed the way that we write music, and how we talk about music, how we communicate musically between the guys in the band. So obviously, even though our musical interests change, and we start listening to all kinds of stuff, and you want to incorporate that somehow into our music, it's still the same kind of foundation, that we build on. So even though we try to evolve and we try to do totally different things, it still ends up being very much Dark Tranquillity because of the shared kind of musical qualities that we enjoy, the stuff that the kind of melodies that we enjoy, the kind of beats, the kind of rhythms, the kind of stuff that we kind of grew up on, those are still going to be present there. So obviously it's still going to sound like us no matter what we try to do.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like your music has the ability for you to experiment but not lose your sound at all.
Yeah. Try as we might, to get away from our own sound, we're still there. It's hard for us to get away from it, and I like that.
Definitely. Now, for you being a vocalist, do you need to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or does sometimes like a lyrical concept, like I know that Terminus has like a story behind it based on an abandoned town and stuff like that, and the lyrics to The Lesser Faith are something very meaningful to me. So like, do you like have to hear the music in order to come up with lyrics, or sometimes does a concept determine the music?
Well, I usually write all the time, just random stuff that so on my mind. So whenever we finish a song and I listen to like a demo of a song, then like things come to mind, and I say, all right, now I get it. Now I get the whole vibe of the song, and that inspires me to kind of pull out some of the stuff that I've already written. But most of the time, I start writing properly after a song is kind of almost finished, or at least like close to being finished, and that inspires me to kind of like, or it kind of evokes some kind of emotion. It kind of triggers some memory, or it triggers some feeling that I need to write about, and then that's what I do. So the music really informs how I write the lyrics, definitely.
Definitely, and they are very beautiful. Now, Dark Tranquillity, it almost seems like every instrument counts with your vocals, the keyboards that are incorporated, the guitar work. Yeah. So is there ever anything that comes first in the songwriting process?
The riffs and the chords and are the most important. Like the melodies, that's what kind of comes first. So whenever like Anders writes, for instance, who's like he's a drummer, but he still really like focuses on melody as well. Also in his drumming. So for him, it's all about the melody and kind of like song structure. And with Martin, when he writes songs, it's more about mood, because he's a keyboard player and he wants to kind of build emotion like that. Whereas when Nicholas writes songs, it's different as well. Like he has a different kind of focus, So it all depends, and that's what's interesting. And for me, I come in after those songs are written, and then I try to put my kind of thing on it, or try to kind of grasp what the intention of the song is, and what the kind of emotional core is, and then try to make something out of it. And so it's for me, it's fascinating to see how that works.
Yeah, definitely. And every member in the band counts, because I know that Nicholas does the artwork for the band, and just it seems like you guys have a real dichotomy of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's always been like that. Like you kind of you figure out like what's your strength, and then you kind of focus on that. And Nicholas's artwork and songwriting, and so he doesn't tour anymore, but he's still like such a huge part of the band anyway.
I'm hoping that I'll see an exhibition of his artwork soon.
He's done a few, and he's not comfortable at all with doing that, because that's not his thing. He's not that kind of guy, but I would love to see that too, because it's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the main thing I wanted to talk about is coming from the Gothenburg scene. I mean, with you guys, I know that, Hammerfall has had members from both Dark Tranquillity and In Flames. I know that members of In Flames were from Dark Tranquillity, and with At the Gates and The Haunted and Soilwork, representing Soilwork today.
Hey, awesome.
But was it easier to kind of start a band coming from that Gothenburg scene?
I don't know. I have nothing to compare to, but we lived in a small suburb outside of Gothenburg, and when me and Niklas decided to start a band, we just asked our closest friends who lived close to us. So we lived on the same street, and we said, "Hey, let's form a band," and we started playing, and that was it. So. But of course, it helped to be encouraged by other bands, because there were other bands around. And then as more bands kind of started, it was easier to kind of get things going and start shows and get encouraged and also get inspiration and help from other bands. Like their experience with touring or record labels or whatever helped us. So it was, I don't know. Definitely easier when you're not alone in the world, or in a small town where no one else cares about music. In Gothenburg, we always had like a scene, not maybe a death metal scene, but at least like a extreme metal or interesting metal, or like anything outside of the norm was okay. And there was a club and a venue where all of that stuff was possible, and that's why we could have shows and stuff like that. So obviously that helped as well. So I don't know. I don't know how different that is from anyone else's experience, in any other city. But for us, it was rough. We struggled as any other band, but we didn't really think of it that way. It was not about kind of making it or like getting out to play. It was more like we being in the rehearsal room, being in my parents' garage playing music, that was it. And if we could actually perform in front of a crowd and do a show in a club, that was awesome as well. But that was not the main focus. It was all about just being together, coming up with something together and playing together. That was it. So everything else kind of happened.
Awesome. It's interesting because in New York here we have the hardcore scene, and then Seattle with grunge. It just seemed a lot of people think like, a whole group of people decided to start a band at the same time, but it seemed to have happened very organically.
It really did, and I think that's the same for every other city that has a scene, quote unquote. But of course, looking back at it now, of course it was, because all the bands we always hung out together. We sometimes rehearsed in the same kind of rehearsal room complex, all that stuff. So it's very, very close knitted. We were all very, very close friends, and of course, a lot of members switched back and forth between the bands. So obviously, that thing happened, but it didn't feel like it, and we didn't really see it that way. So it was weird when people started talking about that in the 90s, about like how this is there was a Gothenburg scene. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I couldn't get it.
Well, it's kind of a unique, like, because a lot of people would assume, like, oh, the band's from Sweden. It sounds like you guys are at the gates of the haunted. But I mean, Sweden is home to bands like Blindside and Avatar and Arch Enemy and Meshuggah. It seems like there's a diverse scene, and I'm a fan of pop, and I think you guys are being home of Kent, which is the best pop band. That's not an opinion; it's a fact. Kent is one of the best.
Definitely from Sweden, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's something that we're immensely proud of. I love Kent as well. Amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And it's maybe weird to say, but some of my absolute favorite bands are in any genre of metal or music or rock, whatever, are Swedish bands, or even some of my friends from Gothenburg. Like when it comes to progressive metal, Evergrey is as good as it gets. When it comes to like doom and sludge, Monolord is one of my favorite bands. When it comes to progressive rock, there are some incredible fucking Swedish bands that I love. So yeah, I don't know. It's fantastic. I'm really, really happy and super proud of all the cool music that's being made in Sweden.
Yes, Swedish pride. But so before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Just so you know, it's 2 years since Atoma. Can we be expecting any new music?
Well, the idea is to finish up this tour, and we do some more shows before the end of the year, and maybe some in the beginning of next year. But then we head home and start thinking about that kind of stuff.
Okay, you didn't like have anything written or?
No, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't tell me anyway. Yeah. But thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Yep. Everybody, we are here with Dark Tranquillity. Pick up Atoma if you haven't already. Catch them on their tour with Amorphous, Moonspell, and Omnium Gatherum. We'll see you next time in Heavy New York, everybody.